Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this EPALE Discussion. My name is Andrea La Peña. I will be your host today, and I have the pleasure of moderating this short online discussion. I work as the Deputy Director of the Lifelong Learning Platform, or short, LLP, as you can see on our screens. It's a European civil society organization whose mission is to advocate for better, more inclusive, and more robust education systems. Today, we're here to address one of the big burning topics for education, the green transition, and in particular, the green transition to a circular economy. The European Union has taken significant steps towards the goal of becoming the first carbon-free continent by 2050. But transitioning to a green way of life means rethinking how we live it, and it prompts us to reconsider the environmental impact of everything that we do. At the same time, it asks us to rethink what we learn, the very content of our education, and the way environmental concerns need to cut across learners. This online discussion aims to shed light on the implications of the green transition for education environments and the skills that adults, and in particular young adults, will need to face the transition towards a circular economy. Here with me, I have two guests of honor that will help us navigate these turbulent waters. Let me welcome Raffaela Kihrer, Vice President of the Lifelong Learning Platform and Head of Policy of the European Association for the Education of Adults. Welcome, Raf.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
And Mayri Tiido. Mayri has many hats. She's an adult educator. She's the project manager of a project on circular economy, sustainable competences for youth. She's an entrepreneur. She's a former board member of Azure Europe and many, many other things. Welcome, Mayri.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I think we have put a good amount of food on the table, so we better dive in pretty soon. But first, let me remind everyone who's listening and is connected to comment on the EPALE platform. We want to hear from you what you think about this very important topic. Let me give you both an icebreaker so that we start off with a very difficult question. So if you had to name one skill that adults will need to transition to a circular economy, what would it be?
Should I get started? For me, I think it would be critical thinking for sure, because it encompasses so many other skills and competences as well that we need when we want to navigate the world. It's also important, of course, for active citizenship, for media literacy, all these kinds of things. But it's particularly important when we think about sustainability. Tackling, for example, the greenhouse emissions that are far too high. We need to get temperatures worldwide down. It's also when we think about climate change and the degradation of the natural environment that we need critical thinking to also think about the root causes of these things, why this is happening, and how we can tackle this from a learning perspective, how we can empower citizens and young people, adults, everyone actually to find just and sustainable solutions for this climate crisis, as I would actually call it.
Mayri, do you care to weigh in?
Yes. So critical thinking is a very good one that is very crucial. And from my side, I would add systems thinking, because also for the world is getting more and more complex. So this is also something that it's like inevitable in a way. And in circular economy, we need to understand kind of in what systems things are in. And for that, and in a way, we need to kind of design the linear systems to be circular. So for that, understanding, having knowledge around systems thinking and kind of being able to also apply it in workforce, in work environments, for example, that you figure out the systems that your business is part of, and all that is pretty crucial. So that's my answer.
Both very appropriate answers, I have to say. Not trying to reduce the complexity of our systems, but rather thinking of it in a systemic way is definitely important with some critical thinking. But where do you see this learning happening? How can we foster critical thinking and system thinking? What's the best learning environment for this?
I can get started again. I don't know what the order is, but I believe that in non-formal learning in general, this is where this can really be promoted. Of course, it should be mainstreamed in all kinds of learning and education. Doesn't matter whether it's the formal, non-formal, or even informal learning sector. But I think as it is now, the non-formal learning sector is maybe the sector that is most suited to promoting any skills and values that are connected to sustainability and circular economy, because this is really where people sit together, where they start to discuss, where they learn maybe also debating culture, where they try to dig deeper into themes and subjects, where they also have the space, the mental space, but also the physical space in a way to discuss in a safe environment, and where people can come up with solutions in a more innovative way than probably in the formal sector, in my opinion.
So from my side, I would actually add that even though I think that the non-formal education and, like, for example, youth organizations have very like high potential here to, like, develop the skills of young people and all that, then I think that actually the formal education does have like higher power in that sense, that it to some extent everybody goes through formal education. Not everybody goes to university, but everybody has the mandatory schooling, how many years it is, depending on the country. So I believe that in that sense, formal education should also take this responsibility of, preparing young people for the future. And as in the early 2000s, also this informatics and, like computer education became part of the curriculums of schools, then I think also the sustainability and circular economy should become like the baseline education that every European citizen who goes through education also gets to know what is circular economy, how to have like critical thinking, how to have systems thinking, and kind of like understand like what is this direction that we're going to. Because in 2050, it's like, what, 30 years away, and then all these people are, on their own somewhere, leaders or employees, etc. So like kind of we do have to start already from the education system, I would say.
Maybe I can just add to that. While I really believe that non-formal learning is at this point the sector that is probably promoting these things most, I also absolutely agree that it should be mainstreamed in formal education, because of course we need the youth and the adults of today to find solutions, but we also want to of course empower younger people even and children to already start thinking the process and get the skills that they need. And I mean, this is about transversal skills, actually about life skills that people need, everyone actually, to think about the challenges that we are facing. And of course they are not only about well, sustainability links to so many things, like also the energy crisis that we are facing now, or the war in Ukraine. So if you think about that, there's such a complexity, and we can't start early enough actually to promote the skills and competences to tackle these issues.
All right, thank you very much both for your comments. It's always nice to actually have speakers have different views. It never happens that often, right? And yes, absolutely. There's strong evidence that non-formal education is very well placed to embed the sustainability thinking in all age groups, actually. But of course, formal education remains the way to go. At this point, maybe I will ask if there are questions or comments from the audience that will be popping up. And yes, we do have a comment from Dora. A skill for having a truly circular economy is the ability to adapt to change, and above all, the willingness to do so. Adult education can be important to engage adults more effectively. Reactions from both of you?
I can react first. So I do believe that this adaptability in that sense is also really important, because we do have to, like, from circular economy point of view, not only, businesses have to change how they produce things, what type of products they put out there, how durable they are, and all that. We as consumers also have to start consuming differently things, like looking at ownership differently, like being more open to renting things, being more open to sharing maybe your drill with a neighbor, etc. So that's something that, like this adaptability, we do have to have. And I believe that it is one of the challenges, actually, because we as people, we don't really like change. We like our habits. We like to know that the cheese we've been buying always is still in the market, that it's still in the same package and we can find it easily. So as much as the adaptability and the openness to change is required, we also have to think through each of the age groups, like how do we bring this change step by step, that it would not be too scary for people. And the second part of the comment, that adult education is important, and it is, because the kind of, if we have lifelong learning, which is also this open mind for getting new concepts, ideas, and revising, like what you already know, and building new knowledge, then adult education of engaging young people, or also not so young people, in this change is very important.
Yeah, very much. Raf, go ahead.
Mayri, you mentioned also systemic thinking before, and it also made me reflect that what we need is not only solutions at the individual level, or encouraging individuals to change their consumption behavior, or recycling, or so on, but we also need to empower everyone, like citizens, adults, to think more about the community level and the society level. And I think for this, it actually requires not only adapting to change and finding solutions to mitigate the issues that are there, but actually to think a bit bigger, to have the big picture in mind, and maybe start thinking about the system itself. And I said before, well, we need critical thinking to go to the root causes of climate change, why we are in this climate crisis right now, and why there aren't that many solutions yet, even though, I mean, we have great achievements in science. So why aren't we there yet? And I think this is really going deeper into a debate that we need to have at society level. Where do we want to go as society, as a system, and how can we change a system that is actually based on exploitation? I mean, I know I'm now going into a certain direction, but I believe the facts tell us that we can't only change find solutions at the individual level, but we need to go beyond that, and we need to encourage as many people as possible to create, co-create actually solutions.
Thank you both, and thank you very much, Dora. It is indeed important to have systemic solution. I very much agree, Raf. The direction you were going was pretty clear, but it's a direction I subscribe to. Let me ask you a sharp one. Do you think that the adult population is more or less prepared than youth to face this transition, and why? Raf?
That's a really difficult question, because I'm not sure if either group is really prepared to address climate change and find solutions through circular economy. I just believe that youth is probably more more open to activism, and is probably also more future oriented in their demands. And I'm now really thinking about, for example, the Fridays for Future movements, where it was explicitly the future that young people wanted to address, and a different kind of future. And if adults go to the streets, then it's more often because they see issues in their own lives. For example, a lower purchase power, as it is now with the rising energy prices and so on. So I believe that there's a lot that we can actually learn from youth in this kind of sense, the more future-oriented approach. But on the other hand, I think there's so much that young people can also learn from the older generations, and especially if we think about the circular economy, because I can remember, for example, my grandmother telling me about war times and the times after war, where people just had to recycle things out of a necessity. There were no other options, and people reused and they shared. And in their community, they actually had a sort of circular economy, even though it wasn't trendy back then, but really just a material necessity. And nowadays it's much more trendy, but it's actually an old concept, and there's so much that we can learn from each other, both sides.
Can I add also that I think that youth is definitely, I feel like, more mentally prepared, let's say, because in the last like many years they have been like exposed to this dramatic IPCC reports with like the world's ending type of messages. So for sure, there's more eagerness among young people. And also, for example, in the CESCY project that we've also organized training courses for young people on circular economy, there has been high interest among youth to learn, like, what is circular economy? How can I equip myself for the future? And then on the other hand, also I've been preparing trainings for, adult population, and then getting people to be with you for give this commitment that I want to learn about circular economy is somehow much harder, because it's more, I believe that if you're, I don't know, in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, etc., then it's kind of like, yeah, but can I just do the things as we've done them? Like, they've been working so far, why should we change them? And young people have more this eagerness or this understanding that, yeah, we do need to change things. Unfortunately, they're not currently in the position of power to change things, and therefore the activism is more closer to them. But yeah, I do feel that somehow youth is more prepared, or getting themselves ready, let's say.
And I can see why. Mayri, stay with me. I have a question for you. I know we already addressed this somehow in your answers, but I wanted to understand a bit deeper. What do you think can adult learning and education as a system learn from youth, and vice versa?
Mm-hmm. I think that youth, historically, has always been more, let's say, innovative or more risk-taking. And I think that's also something that I see that a lot of youth organizations are organizing a lot of innovative events, conferences, methods, different, social media activism around circular economy. They're working groups, and the thing is actually going on. There are people committing with their volunteering hours into this. So I believe that that adult education as a system should find an inspiration point, or also how can they integrate also this type of small activism? Can we do a working group, a discussion group on circular economy? Can we discuss how to bring actually circular economy or sustainability principles into trainings? In adult education, you have a lot of people providing the space, and then the participants going into the space. So it's can the educators be let's do our training sustainably. Let's say no to single-use plastics, starting from this small things. So I think there is there's that direction definitely for learning.
Raf, I don't know if you want to comment on this. For me, it was pretty clear. Let me know. Anything to add?
No, I actually really agree on that activism is something that we can learn from as an adult education sector. Just what youth probably can learn from older people, adults, is that good solutions need their time. We can't find really just and sustainable solutions from one day to the next, unfortunately. But this is this needs also negotiation processes at the societal level, and yeah, going deeper into topics, doing research, and so on. So yeah, because we want these solutions to be good for everyone and not just for particular groups.
Yeah, very much agree. And although I think I should consider myself an adult by now, I do agree that youth might be more prepared for this. Let me go back to comments and questions in chat if there's any that can fit the discussion. And yes, there is. Ricky asks, when is the right time to bring sustainability into schools? Should we start at preschool age or at teenage level where students have a moral conscience? Oh, wow. Okay, difficult one. But we were talking about formal education before. So, Mayri, you brought that up. What do you think?
So that is a very good question. And actually with the CESCY project, we also did like a survey among young people. And I believe we had around 200 respondents. And we asked them, when do you think we should, bring circular economy or sustainability education into schools? I think that's what I wanted to say. And the results in that sense are that the majority of respondents think that it definitely has to be on the university level. Then a majority also thinks that it definitely should be in this high school level. And also on the primary school level, there was less conviction or this yes, it has to be on preschool or kindergarten level as such. So I do believe that on kindergarten level, you could still teach people, like young kids, to care for the environment and, bring them up with that value. But for sure, somewhere from ages, 15 onwards, how long ever you're studying lifelong learning, then it should be part of this curricula for sure.
Yeah, well, very sharp answer. Enough.
Yeah, I don't have expert knowledge on early school education or primary school education, but what I can say as a mother of two very young children is that actually even very small children are capable of understanding the principles of sustainability if you explain that to them. And for me, it's just normal to raise them in a conscious way of the environment and to raise them towards sustainability. And for children, it's completely normal. So and that you don't waste resources, for example, that you don't just trash something that can be reused also, because very small children, for example, you can do some arts and crafts with material that would otherwise be trashed. So I think we can start at a very early age. I mean, from actually really the smallest age onwards, and of course to introduce the more the theories around it that probably should happen at a later stage, maybe in primary school or secondary school at latest. But children are open to this. So I don't really think that we have to think in age categories or so. It's something for everyone.
All right, good point of reflection. And actually a nice bridge towards my next question. I wanted to add a little bit of forward-looking discussion. So, Mayri, I'm asking you, what can educators do to ensure that we transition towards a more circular economy? What is the job of the teachers and trainers?
I think number one step is get yourself educated on what is circular economy, what is sustainability, so you feel confident in that topic, because it's not going to go away. So there's no point to play the game like, no, that's not my thing. Like it's like this base thing, as educators know how to design a training, different methods. So it should be part of this like hygiene set of educators. So I think that's step number one. And then also one thing which we have to understand is that circular economy is not something that you kind of like, you have to cancel everything else and then now comes like the box of circular economy, but it's more around doing what you do now, but putting in there this circularity aspect, principles, sustainability principles. So it's like, if you are in your field educating, you're focused on business training, then bring in circular businesses. If you are teaching people on different skills, focus on the skills that could be relevant for the circular economy. So I believe that every one of us as an educator, we can, bring in the perspectives of sustainability, circularity, and, kind of intertwine it with our regular work. So this would be the main two recommendations I would have.
Yeah, very good ones. Rafa, I know that you will have to leave very soon. So I would like to ask you another question. Since we work very much in the EU bubble here in Brussels, and we are very accustomed to what the EU does or tries to do, I'm asking you, what can policymakers do actually to ensure that educators are prepared for the transition?
Well, I guess policy makers should support the structures of learning, education in all sectors, of course. But if we are talking about adult learning, then specifically adult learning, actually, because as you might know, adult learning is the sector that is probably most fragmented of all in Europe, and very few countries actually have very strong governance structures in adult learning. So it's civil society, adult learning providers that try to find these structures. And this also has repercussions, of course, on for example, initial training of educators and professionalization. Because if adult learning providers don't have sustainable finances and no adequate structures, it means that educators are in a way left behind a bit, even though this of course shouldn't be the idea of the system. So I think policymakers should really ensure that there are sustainable structures, and I mean also sustainable funding for learning providers. And that there are possibilities for initial training of adult educators, maybe even through certain curricula, but then also further education, professionalization of educators, and maybe the micro credentials could be a great chance for that. We will see what the future will bring. But yeah, I'd say that this is probably the most important thing, supporting infrastructure, because educators also need a space. It can be digital space, but also a physical space where they meet people and where learners come in. That needs to be a safe environment, an open environment, an environment that encourages discussion, debate, critical reflection, maybe also conflict and conflict resolution. And for all of that, educators need support from the political level. And especially in the adult learning field, this isn't happening as much as it should.
Yeah, this is very true indeed. Sadly, very true. Mayri, do you have anything to add on this?
I think if we talk about policy, then again, there's like a lot of there are a lot of like places where to go, and I think one thing which I am really looking like towards and looking forward to is, in addition to, on the EU level, like having this circular action plan and the the long-term vision is also that like we would go to a state level, and on the state level also the governments would dare to make any kind of regulation towards circularity in the business sector, but also in education, because education is like a local business, right? Like that, not a local business, but it's like for each state to decide themselves. And that is something that is not yet happening currently. For example, in Estonia, environmental education is still really much linked to the fact that if there is a teacher and if there is the capacity in the school, but it's not necessary. And by environmental education, I mean, if there is talk about circular economy and sustainability as we talk here, because there is lack of knowledge on circular economy among teachers. So that's also should kind of, I'm looking for towards the ministries of education. It's like, can we educate the teachers on circular economy, or some set of teachers to integrate this topic into some subject, or make a whole new subject around it? But probably there are a million capacity issues going around. So it would still need time to actually get there on the policymakers level. And for that, coming back to the beginning where Rafa said that the power in a way lies with non-formal education, then currently non-formal education is the one that can actually react fast and can adjust their action plans, their focuses really, really quickly. So as long as to get to the moment where education actually takes up also that, okay, we put circular economy in high school as a subject or in universities as a subject, etc. Until that time, I think it's in the hands of activism, youth organizations, other non-formal learning organizations that can actually fill that gap in the market and in the needs.
And I think we can all agree on this one. All right. So as we are approaching the end of this online discussion, at least for the live part, I wanted to go back to the comments and questions on the platform to see if there's anything that we can pick up as a last point. So Anna asks, critical thinking is important, yes, but we use it 10% of time. 90% of time, people rely on habits. So we need to develop sustainable habits and integrate them into everyday life. A very short comment from both of you on this.
Maybe I can get started on that. I don't know if that's based on empirical studies, 10% versus 19%. I'm not quite sure. I think that more people actually use critical thinking, but maybe not as as developed as could be. Yeah, I believe, I agree actually that we need to develop sustainable habits and integrate them into everyday life. But at the same time, of course, we need to empower learners, citizens to develop their critical thinking skills or systemic thinking skills that Mayri mentioned. And we shouldn't just stay where we are and say, okay, this is now the status quo, and we just need to deal with that. But the power and the great thing about learning is that we can encourage people to change their habits, also to change the way of thinking, and yeah, how they deal with others, how they think about the environment. So yeah. For me, that's really the thing that inspires me most about learning, the idea of change and development.
If I may add, then I think that, yeah, I would not say that it's not realistic that we're all, everybody living their whole day 100% conscious. We do have habits. But I think what we need, and that's why we need also in that sense systems, and before that systems thinking, is that we could create systems where we can make sustainable behavior also habitual. For example, you're at a festival, you want to get a drink, and then they want to give it to you in a plastic cup. Just giving a really simple, simplified example here. And then in a way, critical thinking could be, I have my own, I should have brought my own cup, or I have my cup in the bag, or I have my water bottle in the bag, I'm going to give that instead, or I'm not going to buy a drink. So that's the thing, that instead of having a plastic cup, maybe there is like a cup circulation, that these cups are being reused. So I don't even need to go through mega analysis of like, should I do that? Should I not do that? Am I creating waste or not? And that's the thing which I believe what we need for, like, transforming also the society more sustainable, is that there are those systems in place where we don't even need to have, let's say, active critical thinking, and we can just do our habits, but they are like, we have like a sustainable circular system in place that supports us and frees up our mental space of worrying constantly about the environment, about what's the impact we're having here, what's the footprint we're having, because I know that there are a lot of people who do that. It's not the majority yet, and there's also a lot of young people who have climate anxiety, because it kind of feels that everything you do is just harming the planet. So for that, we do need systems in place, and that's like businesses, policymakers, all that education to educate people on those systems.
And civil society. Hey, all right. I wanted to react on this, but I think you said it all. Just to add that I think that the division between 10 and 90%, so critical thinking versus habits, comes from modern cognitive science. I would be very interested to read some more about this, even just at a personal level. And for this, I encourage everyone to keep the discussion going on the EPALE platform. For the three of us, our discussion ends here. Thank you very much to both Raf and Mayri for being with us, for sharing their knowledge and their perspectives on skills needed for circular economy. We will continue the discussion on the EPALE platform. Stay there with us for the whole day. We will make sure to answer your questions and clear out your doubts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.